The new discoveries here at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre happened during a recent restoration around the tomb of Jesus.
When the ground gave way, it started as barely a tremor, a slight, almost imperceptible shift in the stone, the kind of thing you sense before you can measure it. For decades, the custodians of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre had been quietly avoiding any serious work beneath the tomb chamber. And for good reason. This is no ordinary building. It is one of the most politically and spiritually sensitive structures on Earth, a fragile institution governed by an arrangement so rigid it has its own name, the status quo. Under this centuries-old agreement, every decision involving the church, every nail, every stone, every millimeter of excavation, must receive the approval of three guardians: the Greek Orthodox Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and the Armenian Apostolic Church. No one acts unilaterally. No one acts quickly. And for generations, that meant the foundations beneath the tomb were left almost entirely untouched, sealed under layers of marble, mortar, and silence. But in 2022, the silence broke. Engineers conducting a routine inspection noticed something that couldn't be ignored any longer. The marble floor surrounding the édicule, the ornate shrine enclosing the tomb itself, was moving. At first, the signs were subtle. Hairline cracks in the stone, almost too fine to see. Then, precision measurements revealed the full scale of the problem. Sections of the floor were sinking. The cause was both simple and terrifying. Beneath the marble lay nearly 2,000 years of compacted fill, soil, rubble, and debris compressed by an unbroken procession of pilgrims, renovations, and the relentless weight of time. That fill was failing. And if it continued to fail, the damage to the most sacred site in Christianity could be irreversible. The message from engineers was unambiguous: act now, or risk losing everything. Science gets invited, inside. With no other option available, the three guardian churches reached a rare and reluctant agreement. For the first time in living memory, scientists were permitted inside, not to study, not to explore, but to stabilize the floor, and to do it fast. The atmosphere inside the church changed the moment the technical teams arrived. Technicians moved with deliberate quietness, acutely aware that they were stepping into a space that had been shielded from outside scrutiny for generations. Every footstep carried weight that had nothing to do with physics. The first instrument permitted inside was ground-penetrating radar. Technicians guided it slowly across the marble surface, sending invisible pulses deep into the layers below. The data that returned was immediately unsettling. The bedrock beneath the church wasn't flat. It wasn't uniform. It rose and dipped in ways that matched no existing map, no architectural record, no previous survey. And scattered throughout the subsurface were hollow spaces, sealed cavities that had apparently remained undisturbed for centuries. When the first slab of marble was finally lifted from the floor, the room went quiet. Beneath the modern paving wasn't loose soil or routine construction debris. The exposed layers were dense, carefully packed, and entirely undisturbed. This was not a neglected crawl space beneath an old building. It was a perfectly preserved stratigraphic record, a layered archive of everything this ground had witnessed. And the team was only getting started. A city in layers. What the archaeologists encountered as they dug deeper was not random rubble. It was a timeline, a precise, almost chronological record of one of history's most contested pieces of land. The uppermost layer was straightforward, leveling mortar from early 20th century restorations. Beneath it came fragments of Byzantine paving from the 4th century, remnants of the grand reconstruction commissioned by Emperor Constantine, who had ordered the church built here in the first place. Then, the layers became heavier, literally. Below the Byzantine material, the team struck compacted rubble of a very different character. Dense, uniform, and clearly intentional. These were not the random stones of a collapsed building. This fill was deliberate, systematic, and traced directly to a single historical act: Emperor Hadrian's 2nd century effort to obliterate the site entirely. After the Jewish revolts, Hadrian had ordered the construction of a pagan temple over the ground venerated by Christians, burying everything beneath it under layers of Roman fill. His intention was erasure. His unintended consequence, as archaeologists now understand, was preservation. By sealing the layers beneath, Hadrian had inadvertently protected them for nearly 2,000 years. The team understood what this meant. If the Roman rubble had compressed but not destroyed the material beneath it, then what lay below might be intact. They were right. Before the church, before the temple, a quarry below the Roman fill, the soil changed character entirely. The texture shifted. The chemistry shifted. What had been compacted rubble became something unmistakably industrial: quarry dust, stone chips, and heavy packing sediment consistent with large-scale extraction work. Pottery fragments recovered from this layer were dated with precision. The ceramic profiles matched vessel types, in use before 70 CE, before the Roman destruction of Jerusalem, before Hadrian, before Constantine. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed what the soil was already suggesting. The subsurface beneath the church sloped in a pattern identical to other known quarry cuts identified across ancient Jerusalem. The profile was consistent, unmistakable, and thoroughly documented in the archaeological record. Before this ground held a tomb, before it held a temple, before it held a church, it was a working quarry. A loud industrial space where enormous limestone blocks were cut by hand and hauled away by human labor, probably for the construction of Jerusalem's city walls and public buildings. The city had been built in part from the rock beneath what would one day become its holiest site. But the chemistry of the soil told the team they still hadn't reached the bottom of the story. And then the color of the earth changed completely. The garden that had no right to exist. Beneath the quarry dust, beneath the Roman rubble, beneath the Byzantine marble, the team expected bedrock. Hard, bare, Judean limestone, the natural end of the record. What they found instead stopped the excavation cold. Pockets of dark, rich, fertile soil, completely unlike anything above it. The texture was different. The color was different. The organic content was different. And its presence here in this location made no geological sense whatsoever. Fertile garden soil does not form naturally inside a stone quarry. It does not appear spontaneously in bedrock. Soil like this exists in one circumstance only. Someone brought it here deliberately. Someone imported it, placed it, and cultivated it in a location where nothing would otherwise grow. The team sent samples to the laboratory for full archaeobotanical analysis. The results were extraordinary. The lab identified preserved pollen grains and organic seeds from domesticated olive trees and cultivated grapevines. Not wild vegetation, not opportunistic growth, but intentionally farmed crops, tended by human hands in the 1st century CE. The significance was impossible to overstate. Ancient texts had described the tomb of Jesus as being located inside a garden. The Gospel of John is explicit on the point. Not vague, not metaphorical. A garden, adjacent to the crucifixion site, with a new tomb inside it. And now, beneath nearly 6 meters of accumulated history, the soil was saying the same thing. But the most striking evidence wasn't in the lab results. It was in the bedrock itself. Once the dark soil was carefully removed, what appeared beneath it were shallow planting beds cut directly into the limestone. Small, orderly, geometrically arranged. Too precise to be natural fractures. Too deliberate to be anything other than intentional. These stone beds match the agricultural features commonly identified near elite 1st century Jewish burial sites across the region. Gardens maintained by families wealthy enough to cultivate them, tended with the expectation of continued visits. what the floor was holding. 6 meters down, layer by layer, 20 centuries compressed into a column of earth and stone barely wider than a doorway. A quarry that built a city, a garden that fed a burial site, a Roman platform built to erase a memory that refused to be erased, a Byzantine floor laid in reverence over what had been buried beneath, and beneath all of it, soil that remembers a spring morning in first-century Jerusalem, preserved in pollen grains no larger than a grain of sand. The engineers came to fix the floor. The floor had other plans. Work at the site is ongoing. Professor Francesca Romana Stasolla and her team at Sapienza University of Rome have indicated that the northern aisle has yet to be fully excavated, and that, in her own words, many more surprises are still in the works. The archive beneath the church is not yet finished speaking.